Our image of royalty conjures visions of gleaming crowns, grand fortresses, and bloodlines ordained to govern. Throughout history, monarchs labored relentlessly to craft an image of divine selection, embodying power, constancy, and flawlessness. Yet beyond the palace gates lies a far darker narrative, one filled with grief, concealment, and offspring whose arrival sparked dread rather than joy. The reality was that royal births didn't always produce healthy children. When infants entered the world with physical abnormalities, diseases, or concealed afflictions, entire dynasties trembled. In civilizations where hereditary succession was paramount, a single child's weakness could escalate into a matter of national urgency. These weren't merely private sorrows, they were watershed moments that redirected the fate of kingdoms. Royal childbirth was always a public spectacle. The instant a queen's labor began, whole populations held their breath in anticipation. A robust, healthy son guaranteed succession stability, solidified political partnerships, and ensured dynastic continuity. But when an infant arrived frail, malformed, or unable to thrive, the consequences rippled far beyond the royal chambers. For ruling families, what hung in the balance was extraordinary. Physical deformity wasn't merely viewed as a health issue. It was read as heavenly condemnation, ancestral malediction, or proof that the royal house had forfeited its rightful authority. Monarchs governed through both political maneuvering and public perception. The appearance of strength rivaled actual power in importance, and nothing undermined that fuss aid more devastatingly than a vulnerable or imperfect successor. Among Europe's most formidable dynasties stood the Habsburgs, whose territories spanned from the Iberian Peninsula to Austrian lands, from the Low Countries to colonial territories. Yet beneath their resplendent regalia festered a sinister truth. Sequential generations of strategic marriages, intended to maintain bloodline purity, gradually eroded their vitality. This catastrophic decline reached its apex in King Charles II of Spain. His birth in 1661 should have represented the culmination of Spanish Habsburg ambitions, the heir upon whom imperial dreams depended. Instead, his arrival heralded the dynasty's dissolution. Charles inherited the notorious Habsburg jaw in its most severe manifestation. His protruding lower lip created such extreme distortion that basic functions like chewing and articulating words became nearly impossible. His oversized tongue caused constant drooling, while his speech emerged garbled and incomprehensible. Physically, he remained feeble and stunted in development. Walking eluded him until age 8, and even afterward, his gait remained shaky and uncertain. Mentally, he struggled equally. Despite instruction from clergy and scholars, Charles found even elementary concepts challenging. His halting speech, minimal grasp of governance, and behavior led foreign diplomats to describe him as mentally deficient and seemingly cursed. Indeed, his subjects called him El Hexado, the Hexed One. Yet this delicate youth ascended to rule one of Europe's mightiest empires, a dominion requiring strength, cunning, and foresight. Rather than governing, Charles became a marionette, controlled by scheming nobles, international forces, and his own relatives. The ultimate catastrophe was his inability to father children. 2 marriages, first to Maria Louisa of Orleans, then to Mariana of Neuburg, produced no offspring. His physical frailty extended to sterility, guaranteeing the extinction of the Spanish Habsburg dynasty. Charles's death in 1700 at merely 30, 8 years left no descendants and no dynastic future. His passing ignited the War of Succession, a continental conflict that fundamentally altered European power dynamics. The physical afflictions of one individual, resulting from generations of consanguinity, toppled an empire that had once dominated the globe. England's Tudor dynasty likewise bore the burden of delicate hairs. Before Henry Venn gained notoriety for his 6 marriages and tyrannical rule, his older brother Arthur held the position of Prince of Wales. Arthur embodied Tudor aspirations, attractive, cultured, and wed to Catherine of Aragon, positioned to forge an Anglo-Spanish alliance and usher in national prosperity. However, Arthur's constitution was perpetually fragile, pallid, gaunt, and feeble. He appeared ill-suited for royal responsibilities. Mere months following his marriage, calamity struck. Arthur contracted a severe illness, probably tuberculosis or the mysterious sweating sickness plaguing Tudor England. At just 15, he perished, leaving his young bride Catherine devastated. Arthur's demise transformed everything. His younger sibling Henry abruptly became heir apparent. When Henry V subsequently married his brother's widow Catherine, it initiated a cascade of events that fundamentally reshaped England. Henry's obsession with producing a male heir triggered annulments, beheadings, and England's rupture with Rome. The English Reformation, Protestantism's ascendance, and centuries of sectarian strife all originated from Arthur's premature death. One fragile royal youth had rewritten an entire nation's trajectory. France experienced similar anguish. The Bourbon dynasty cultivated an image of might, magnificence, and divine ordination. Louis XIV, the Sun King, personified this dominance through elaborate rituals, opulent palaces, and an aura of absolute perfection. Yet within the royal household, reality proved far more precarious. Offspring born with deformities or maladies were frequently concealed. Some perished in infancy, their identities swiftly expunged from records. Others lived in isolation, never permitted entry to Versailles' glittering corridors. Perfection demanded preservation, even through the burial of truth. Perhaps the most heartbreaking episode occurred a century afterward under Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. Their young son Louis Charles, the Dauphin, born in 1785, represented monarchical hope during escalating social turmoil. But destiny proved merciless. When the French Revolution exploded, Louis Charles's existence was shattered. Following his parents' executions, the already weakened boy was imprisoned in a lightless cell. Isolated, neglected, and tormented by jailers, he deteriorated. At merely 10 years old, he died in confinement, his frail body destroyed not solely by disease, but by revolutionary brutality. The child who should have reigned as Louis XIV instead symbolized a dynasty crumbling beneath its own weight. His death signified the end of monarchical innocence, a haunting testament that even children couldn't escape history's savage tempests. No royal tragedy resonates more infamously than the Romanovs, Russia's final imperial dynasty. For Tsar Nicholas II and Tsarina Alexandra, their son's birth in 1904 promised dynastic security. Following 4 daughters, the long-anticipated male heir, Alexei, brought jubilation to the court, but elation rapidly transformed to terror. Alexei inherited hemophilia, a hereditary blood disorder preventing proper clotting. Even minor bruising or cuts threatened his life. This condition, transmitted through Queen Victoria of Britain's lineage, became a scourge upon numerous European royal families. For the Romanovs, it proved catastrophic. Every tumble, every injury plunged the imperial court into crisis. The family's frantic efforts to protect Alexei led them to rely upon Grigory Rasputin, a mystical healer who appeared capable of alleviating the boy's agony. Rasputin's authority expanded so dramatically that it generated scandal throughout Russia. Many believed a madman controlled the monarchy. As Russia spiraled toward revolution, Alexei's affliction transcended private struggle. It epitomized imperial weakness. When revolutionaries executed the Romanovs in 1918, Alexei was merely 13. His abbreviated life, characterized by suffering and secrecy, had contributed to destroying one of history's most formidable dynasties. For centuries, queens shouldered an unimaginable weight. Their value was frequently determined not by intelligence or authority, but by their capacity to deliver robust, healthy successors. When children arrived deformed or sickly, blame invariably fell upon the mother. Queen Anne of England represents, perhaps, the most tragic example. Throughout her lifetime, she endured 17 pregnancies, 17 times bearing dynastic hopes within her body. But fortune proved cruel. Miscarriages, stillbirths, and infant mortality followed relentlessly. Only one child, Prince William, survived past infancy. Briefly, Stuart dynastic continuation seemed possible, but tragedy returned. At 11 years old, William died, leaving Anne without children and heartbroken. When Anne herself passed in 1714, the Stuart line concluded. The crown transferred to the Hanoverians, fundamentally altering Britain's future. Anne's personal devastation became a constitutional crisis, a painful demonstration that dynasties could collapse not on battlegrounds, but in birthing chambers. For every royal child whose story endures in historical memory. Countless others had their identities obliterated. Numerous infants born with deformities received no acknowledgement whatsoever. They were sequestered in remote estates, confined to monasteries, or silently interred. Acknowledging their existence meant admitting vulnerability, a risk monarchs couldn't tolerate, so silence became their strategy. Entire generations of children vanished into secrecy, their lives abbreviated or concealed, their narratives forgotten. Yet rare exceptions existed. Queen Victoria of Britain, for instance, refused to hide her daughter, Princess Victoria, who endured spinal deformity. Though her existence was marked by suffering, she remained integrated within the royal family, visible publicly. A subtle rejection of centuries-old shame.